Imagine stepping back in time to the early 1920s, to a small corner of Oklahoma where the Osage Nation lived. They weren't just living, they were prospering. In fact, they were the wealthiest people per capita in the entire world. How? Because beneath their land, deep in the earth, lay a treasure trove of black gold, oil. Each member of the Osage tribe received what were called head rights, which were shares in the tribe's mineral trust. This meant regular, massive royalty payments from the oil companies drilling on their reservation. They built mansions, drove fancy cars, hired servants, and sent their children to study in Europe. They were living the American dream, a dream that would soon curdle into a horrifying nightmare. This period of incredible wealth was shadowed by a dark and sinister plot. One by one, members of the Osage Nation began to die under mysterious and violent circumstances. It started slowly, almost unnoticeably. An illness here, a suspicious accident there. But soon, the pattern became undeniable. Healthy people would suddenly waste away and die. Others would be found shot, poisoned, or blown up in their own homes. The community was gripped by a suffocating fear. They called this time the Reign of Terror. Who could they trust when their own neighbors, friends, and even spouses might be plotting their demise? The local authorities were either incompetent, corrupt, or directly involved. Investigations went nowhere, and the death toll continued to climb. Let's talk about one family in particular, the family of Molly Burkhart. Molly was an Osage woman married to a white man named Ernest Burkhart. Her family was one of the wealthiest. Then her sisters began to die. First, her sister Anna Brown was found shot to death in a ravine in May 1921. Her death was ruled a homicide, but no one was charged. Soon after, their mother, Lizzie Q, died from a mysterious wasting illness, a common method of poisoning at the time. Then, in 1923, another sister, Rita Smith, and her husband Bill were killed when their house was bombed. The explosion was so powerful it blew their home to pieces. Molly herself began to suffer from a similar wasting sickness that had claimed her mother. She was slowly being poisoned. Why was this happening? The motive was pure, cold-blooded greed. The Osage head rights, the source of their immense wealth, could be inherited. If an Osage person died, their head right would pass to their legal heirs. Many white settlers had married into Osage families, positioning themselves to inherit fortunes. If their Osage spouse and any Osage children died, that entire fortune, that gusher of oil money, would transfer directly to them. This created a chilling incentive for murder. Spouses killed spouses, guardians killed their wards, and friends betrayed friends, all for a piece of the Osage oil wealth. The perpetrators weren't just lone wolves. This was an organized conspiracy. Doctors, lawmen, morticians, and local businessmen were all part of the scheme, helping to orchestrate the murders and cover them up. The Osage people were desperate. They had tried everything. They hired private investigators, but these detectives were often intimidated, run out of town, or even murdered themselves. The local and state investigations were a complete failure, tainted by corruption. The situation was so dire that in 1923, the Osage Tribal Council took a bold step. They sent a representative to Washington, D.C. to plead directly with the federal government for help. This plea finally landed on the desk of a young, ambitious director of a relatively new federal agency, J. Edgar Hoover, head of the Bureau of Investigation, which would soon become the FBI. For Hoover, the Osage Murders case was a high-stakes opportunity. His agency was still trying to prove its worth and establish its reputation. He knew that if they could crack this complex and dangerous case, it would put the Bureau on the map. So, he assembled a team of undercover agents. This was a novel approach at the time. The agents couldn't just walk into Osage County with badges and start asking questions. That would have been a death sentence. Instead, they had to blend in. One agent posed as a cattleman, another as an insurance salesman, and another as an oil prospector. They had to slowly infiltrate the community, earn the trust of the locals, and gather evidence without raising suspicion. The lead agent on the case was a man named Tom White, a former Texas Ranger. White was a quiet, unassuming lawman, but he was tough and determined. He and his team of undercover agents spent months, even years, painstakingly piecing together the puzzle. They followed money trails, interviewed witnesses in secret, and navigated a landscape of fear and mistrust. They discovered that the conspiracy was far more extensive than anyone had imagined. It was masterminded by a prominent local cattleman, a man who presented himself as a friend and benefactor to the Osage people. His name was William Hale, but everyone knew him as the King of the Osage Hills. William Hale was a powerful and respected figure in the community. He was wealthy, influential, and had deep connections. To the Osage, he was a trusted ally, offering advice and assistance. But behind this friendly facade was a sociopathic criminal mastermind. He was the orchestrator of the Reign of Terror. He had coerced and manipulated his own nephew, Ernest Burkhart Marley's husband, to participating in the murders of her family. Ernest was a weak-willed man, torn between his love for Molly and his fear of his uncle. Under Hale's direction, Ernest had helped arrange the murders and had been slowly poisoning his own wife, Molly, to inherit her head right as well. The agents discovered that Hale had a network of criminals he used as hired killers, paying them to carry out the grisly work. The investigation culminated in a series of dramatic arrests and trials. Bringing William Hale to justice was not easy. He used his wealth and influence to intimidate witnesses and tamper with juries. The first trials resulted in hung juries and mistrials. It seemed as though the King of the Osage Hills was untouchable. But Tom White and the Bureau of Investigation were relentless. They kept building their case, protecting their witnesses, and pushing for convictions. One of the key breaks came when Ernest Burkhart, facing a long prison sentence, finally broke his silence and agreed to testify against his uncle, William Hale. His testimony was a bombshell, revealing the full, horrifying extent of the conspiracy from the inside. Finally, in 1929, after multiple trials, William Hale was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. Ernest Burkhart was also convicted, as were some of the hired killers. It was a landmark victory for the young FBI and a moment of justice, however incomplete, for the Osage Nation. But the story doesn't end there. The official investigation focused on the murders connected to Hale's conspiracy, resulting in about 24 convictions. However, historians and the Osage people believe the actual number of murders was much, much higher, possibly in the hundreds. Many deaths were never investigated, classified as accidents or illnesses, their secrets buried with the victims. The full scope of the Reign of Terror is something we may never truly know. The Osage Murders are a dark and tragic chapter in American history. It's a story of greed, betrayal, and systemic racism. It reveals how a community was systematically targeted for its wealth, and how the very systems meant to protect them failed, or worse, participated in their destruction. It took the intervention of a new federal power, the FBI, to finally bring a measure of justice. The bravery of the Osage people who fought for that justice, and the work of the undercover agents who risked their lives. is a testament to the enduring fight against corruption and evil. This story serves as a powerful reminder of a history that should never be forgotten. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as compelling and important as I did, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into forgotten history. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. See you next time.